This was the week where the Biden administration decided to keep in place a Trump-era rule on immigration that utilizes the pandemic as a pretext to detain and deport migrants coming into the United States. The majority of those deported under the ruling are those seeking refuge from violence in Central America, but also from Haiti. A lot of Haitian immigrants have been deported back to that, whatever that situation is there. And let me just say, you know what brings COVID, if you're concerned about immigrants in a pandemic, putting them all together in a prison, that will ensure COVID. And in fact, many detention centers have been hit by COVID. But I just wanted to show you the rise in detentions. Yes, there's been more of a rise in an influx in immigration, in migrants, but even under Trump, it was falling. And then Biden has increased that. So, and especially when it comes to asylum seekers, people who have passed their screenings. So the number of asylum seekers who've passed their initial screenings leapt from 1,700 in April to 3,400 in late June, making up about 13% of all detainees. Now, a lot of folks are saying, look, we have ankle monitors. There's ways to track people. Why do you need to detain people? And so it's like two steps forward, mostly, I don't know, half a step forward and 3 steps back. There's been a little bit of progress. A couple of controversial ICE contracts on detention centers, one in Georgia, another in Massachusetts, were terminated. No other facilities, though, lost their ICE contracts, and Biden has proposed funding for 32,500 immigrant detention beds in his budget, which is a modest decrease from 34,000. It's nothing, right? Which was under Trump, funded by Trump. One of the biggest ICE detention centers, which is a private detention center, is called WIN. And that is in Louisiana. Southern Poverty Law Center in June called on the Biden administration to cancel its contract, citing abuse, medical neglect, racism, and other mistreatment of the facility, which is tucked in a dense forest in rural Louisiana and ringed by barbed wire. I can speak. It is so upsetting to me. I don't know, Nato, how you read these 2 stories coming down this week, but that this is a week also where people like Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is blaming COVID on immigrants. This is Ron DeSantis of Florida, where the Delta variant has gone rampant. It has the worst outbreak since the pandemic began is happening right now in Florida. There was something like 24,000 cases on Saturday. He's blaming immigration. And instead of being like, for obviously that's ridiculous. We know, that is a ridiculous claim. But instead of being like, no, it's not coming in through immigrants, and I'm going to drop this like draconian immigration rule that was enacted by Trump because of the pandemic to prove that migrants are not bringing COVID, right? They're seeking asylum. He just continues it, which sort of feeds into the narrative that people like Ron DeSantis are even putting out there.
It's so dumb on so many levels. Like, it's to some extent, the Biden administration, like, there's no, there are some things where you can understand what the political challenge is. Do you know what I mean? Like, where they're, it's like, we talk about defund the police on here, and there are certainly like a lot of Democratic voters who don't support defunding the police.
Sure.
And so like you could sort of understand the political calculus, but it's actually like essential to Democrats' political victory to appeal to immigrant voters. And the fact that like there's no, that they keep that they're so unserious about addressing that issue. And then I don't know if you if you watched it on Twitter this week, but like when these stories were coming out about Biden's detention policies, the replies to those stories to Associated Press were like, don't be so, all these liberals, the like pussy hat type people, Yas Queen, et cetera, hashtag the resistance, who, for years with Trump were like, this is not who we are. America doesn't put people in cages. Now that Biden is doing it, are back to, well, give him, he's only been in 6 months. He can only move so quickly on so many things, and it's really hard. And what's he supposed to do? And like the level of apology by liberals, or just like lack of interest.
Yeah.
Like you and I both know immigrant rights activists who spent years under Obama raising the alarm about these kinds of human rights abuses going in these detention facilities, and then like a lot of liberals sort of discovered it when Trump was doing, got outraged, and then are back to being like not caring about immigrants at all. It's so cynical.
So cynical. And like, look, yes, are families detained now instead of children without their parents? Yeah. It's called family detention. And it's not nearly as bad, but it's close to as bad. It's still awful. It's still detaining people with young children and kids who are spending, months or years of their lives in these places. And again, like, it is proven, right? These folks are not dangerous. They are not criminals. They are seeking refuge. They have their asylum claims. It's on y'all. It's on the backed up asylum system and the court system. It's on the lack of resources going into that. We pour more into, drones to follow migrants as they cross the border. Yeah. And also, like, I'm sorry. We need to move on, but it is incredibly frustrating because there are so many other ways, and it's documented that this is a community that does not pose a threat to anybody. They are fleeing violence, in fact, and that if it's an ankle bracelet, if it's if it's check-ins, if it's appointments, ankle bracelet still feels very inhuman to me. But there are other ways, and actually, it is proven that those folks, because they are seeking asylum, do show up to their appointments, because they do want to long-term be safe. They don't want to be under threat of deportation. They do want to live here, join families, have a job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
if the government wants to track them, they don't need ankle bracelets. They just need to give them iPhones.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the rest of us.
Just kidding. We love you,
Mr. The government.
Mr. Tim Cook. And the government. I'm a good person. Okay. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.